The space station called Terminus Prime floated in the darkness between three star systems. It was neutral ground. No species owned it, no species controlled it. For 200 years, the 12 great powers of the galaxy had met here to talk, to trade, and to avoid war. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the viewing window of her small quarters and watched the stars. She was 43 years old, with dark hair turning gray at the temples and calm brown eyes that had seen too many difficult negotiations. In 6 hours, she would represent humanity at the Conclave of 12 for the first time in history. Humanity was new to the galactic community. They had discovered faster than light travel only 30 years ago. They had met their first alien species only 25 years ago. In the eyes of the galaxy, humans were children. Weak children, soft children, children who had somehow stumbled into space. Without claws, without armor, without venom, without any of the natural weapons that other species possessed. Elena knew what the aliens thought of her people. She had read the intelligence reports. The Velari called humans meat without protection. KTHVer called them soft vermin. The Draconith simply laughed at the idea that humans could ever matter in galactic politics. She did not mind. Let them underestimate humanity. It had happened before. It would happen again. And humanity always survived. A soft knock came at her door. "Come in," Elena said without turning from the window. The door slid open and a man stepped inside. He was tall but not unusually so. He had short brown hair, a forgettable face, and gray eyes that seemed to look at everything and nothing at the same time. He wore simple civilian clothes, dark jacket, dark pants, no uniform, no visible weapons, no badges or medals or signs of rank. His name was Marcus, just Marcus, no last name in any file that Elena had access to, no history before 5 years ago, no family, no friends, no life outside of his work. He was her aide, at least that was what his official title said. Elena knew better. The station security chief wants to know why you brought only one guard, Marcus said. His voice was quiet and flat like stones at the bottom of a still pond. He says the other delegations have between 20 and 50 armed soldiers each. He is concerned for your safety. Elena finally turned from the window. She studied the man who would protect her life for the next 3 days. He stood perfectly still. Most people shifted their weight, touched their faces, looked around the room. Marcus did none of these things. He was like a statue, like a machine waiting to be turned on. "What did you tell him?" she asked. "I told him that his concern was noted." Elena almost smiled. "And what do you think, Marcus? Do you think one guard is enough?" For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then something changed in his gray eyes. It was small, tiny, a flicker of something cold and vast, like looking into deep space and realizing how empty and endless it truly was. "One is enough," he said. Elena believed him. She had been briefed on the Reaper program before this mission. Not fully briefed. Nobody was fully briefed except the 12 people who ran the program, but she had been told enough to understand what Marcus was. Humanity had always been good at creating weapons. Spears, swords, guns, bombs, missiles. It was what humans did. They found new ways to kill. They perfected the art of death, and when they finally reached the stars and discovered that the galaxy was full of species that wanted to destroy them, they created the most dangerous Weapon of all, they created Reapers. Details were classified beyond anything Alina could access, but she knew the basics: genetic modification, cybernetic enhancement, psychological conditioning, years of training that would break any normal mind. The candidates were selected from humanity's most elite soldiers, and then they were rebuilt into something new, something terrible, something that could protect humanity against any threat. There were only 50 Reapers in existence. Each one was worth more than a battleship. Each one was a national secret of the highest order, and one of them had been assigned to protect Alina at the most important diplomatic event in human history. She wondered what the aliens would think if they knew. The opening ceremony begins. In 6 hours, Alina said, I should rest. Will you be nearby? I am always nearby. Marcus said, you will not see me until you need me, but I will be there. He turned and left without another word. The door slid shut behind him. Alina stood alone in her quarters and felt for the first time truly safe. 6 hours later, she walked into the grand chamber of the conclave. The room was enormous. It had been designed to humble visitors, to make them feel small against the power of the 12 great species. The ceiling rose 50 m above the floor. The walls were covered in the flags and symbols of a 100 worlds. Floating platforms carried delegates from different species to their designated areas. Alina walked with her head high and her back straight. She wore a simple black suit, no jewelry, no decorations, nothing to prove. Behind her, at a respectful distance, walked Marcus. He had changed into a simple gray suit. He carried no visible weapons. He looked like a secretary or a minor official. The aliens watched the humans approach with amusement and contempt. The Velari delegation was the first to react. They were massive reptilian creatures covered in thick scales and natural armor. Their ambassador, a scarred veteran named Korvax, let out a rumbling laugh that echoed through the chamber. This is the human delegation, he called out loud, enough for everyone to hear. One female and one servant. Where are your warriors? Where are your guards? Do humans not understand that this summit could decide the fate of their species? Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Kethvari clicked their mandibles. Amusement, the Draconeth hissed with contempt. Even the normally neutral Curian seemed to smile at the humans. Foolishness. Alina did not react. She simply walked to the human platform and took her seat. Marcus stood behind her, silent and still, his gray eyes moving slowly across the room. He was not looking at the decorations or the architecture. He was counting threats, analyzing weapons, measuring distances, calculating angles of attack and paths of retreat. In his mind, he had already killed everyone in the room 17 different ways, but his face showed nothing. He was just a servant, just an aide, just a forgettable man in a gray suit. The aliens continued to laugh. They had no idea what was standing in their midst. They had no idea that death had walked into their chamber wearing a pleasant smile and civilian clothes. They had no idea that the soft, clawless humans had brought something far more dangerous than soldiers or weapons. They had brought a Reaper, and before the summit was over, they would learn exactly what that meant. The first day of the conclave passed without incident. The 12 species made their opening statements. They talked about trade routes and resource rights. They discussed border disputes and shipping lanes. It was Boring, formal, and exactly what Alina had expected. The other delegations continued to ignore the humans. When Alina spoke, the aliens listened with polite disinterest. When she made proposals, they were acknowledged and then forgotten. Humanity was too new, too weak, too unimportant to matter. Alina did not complain. She took notes. She watched, she learned. Marcus stood behind her through all of it. He did not sit, he did not eat, he did not seem to grow tired. When the session ended and the delegates returned to their quarters, he walked 3 steps behind Alina, his eyes never stopping there. Slow scan of every corridor, every doorway, every shadow. You have not eaten all day, Alina said as they entered her quarters. Are you hungry? I do not require food at this time, Marcus replied. Alina raised an eyebrow. Require? You make it sound like eating is optional. For me it is. She decided not to ask what that meant. There were some things about Reapers that she did not want to know. The second day of the conclave was different. The Kethi Dominion had been quiet during the first day. They were an insectoid species with hard black shells, multiple limbs, and minds that thought of everything in terms of hierarchy and dominance. In their culture, the strong ruled and the weak served. There was no middle ground, no compromise, no mercy. Their high commander Skithel was the oldest and most powerful of their delegation. He had led armies across a dozen worlds. He had crushed rebellions and conquered species in the Kethar Dominion. He was considered a living legend, and he hated humans. He hated their soft skin and their small bodies. He hated their strange customs and their talk of equality and cooperation. But most of all, he hated that these weak, pathetic creatures had dared to claim 3 colony worlds in what he considered Kethi territory. The humans had arrived in that sector first. They had established colonies legally according to galactic law, but Eskathiel did not care about galactic law. He cared about power, and he would not allow vermin to hold territory that belonged to the Dominion. On the second day he made his move. The Keth-Vari Dominion demands that humanity surrender the colonies designated Terra Nova, New Beijing, and Sanctuary. Skethel announced, his voice echoing through the Grand Chamber. These worlds exist within our sphere of influence. The humans are trespassing. They will leave or they will be removed. The chamber went silent. This was not a negotiation. This was a threat. Alina stood slowly from her seat. She felt every eye in the room turned toward her. The other species watched with interest. Most of them expected her to back down. Humanity was weak. After all, humanity had no real military power. What could they possibly do against the Keth war machine? The colonies you mentioned were established legally under the Treaty of Neutral Stars, Alina said, her voice calm and clear. Humanity has no intention of surrendering them. However, we are willing to discuss shared resource rights and trade agreements that could benefit both our peoples. Scal's mandibles clicked together in a sound that Alina had learned meant anger. You do not understand, human. I am not asking, I am telling. Your colonies belong to the Dominion now. You will leave or you will die. Those are your only options. Then I respectfully decline both options, Alina replied. Humanity will not abandon its people, and humanity does not respond well to threats. For a moment the chamber was completely still. Then Scal moved. He was fast for his size, his powerful legs carried him across the chamber floor in seconds. His guards moved with him. 7 heavily armed soldiers forming a protective formation around their commander. Other delegates scattered out of the way. Some called for order, some simply watched. Skethel stopped in front of the human platform. He towered over Alina, his black shell gleaming under the chamber lights. Up close he was terrifying. His body was covered in natural armor that could stop bullets. His limbs ended in claws that could tear through metal. His eyes, all 6 of them, burned with cold hatred. "You dare refuse me," he hissed. "You, a soft little creature with no claws, no shell, no weapons. Do you know how many species I have crushed? Do you know how many worlds have burned because they defied the Dominion?" Alina did not step back. She did not show fear. She simply looked up at the massive alien and said, "I know exactly who you are, High Commander, and I am still refusing." As Thal made a sound that might have been laughter. "Then perhaps you need a lesson in respect. Perhaps all humans need to learn what happens when they insult their betters." He raised one massive claw. The blade at the end was sharp enough to cut through bone. He intended to strike her, not to kill perhaps, but to wound, to humiliate, to show the entire conclave what happened to species that defied the Keth. That was when something changed in the room. Marcus had not moved from his position behind Alina. He had not drawn a weapon. He had not spoken a single word, but suddenly every creature in the chamber felt something that made their blood run cold. It was not a sound. It was not a smell. It was something older and deeper, something that lived in the primitive parts of their brains, that remembered what it meant to be prey, something that whispered to them that a predator was watching, that death was near, that they should run and hide and pray that they were not noticed. The Villari ambassador Korvax felt his scales tighten against his body. His instincts screamed at him to flee, to find shelter, to get away from whatever was generating that terrible presence. The Dreenith delegation stopped breathing. Their species had evolved as ambush predators. They knew what it felt like to hunt, and they knew what it felt like to be hunted. Right now they felt hunted. Even the ancient Salarans, who had seen civilizations rise and fall, felt a chill pass through their bodies. They had not felt fear in 1,000 years. They felt it now. Skethel hesitated. His raised claw trembled in the air. Some part of his brain, some ancient instinct buried beneath centuries of evolution, was telling him to stop, to back away, to not complete the motion he had started. He looked down at Alina. She had not moved. She was still watching him with those calm brown eyes. Then he looked at Marcus. The human aide stood exactly where he had been standing before. His posture had not changed. His expression had not changed, but his eyes, his gray eyes, had become something else entirely. Skyle had conquered worlds. He had faced armies. He had killed thousands of enemies in personal combat. He had never in his entire life seen eyes like those. They were not angry. They were not afraid. They were not even threatening in any way he could describe. They were simply empty, empty and cold and vast, like the space between stars where no light ever reached. Looking into those eyes, Skeel suddenly understood that he was not the predator here. He was the prey. But Skethal had not become High Commander by showing weakness. He had not built his legend by backing down from challenges. His pride would not let him retreat from a single human. No. Matter what his instincts said, he pushed through the fear, he forced his claw to continue its downward arc, he would strike the human ambassador, he would show the galaxy that the Keth feared nothing. It was the worst decision he would ever make. Skethel's claw came down toward Alina's face. It never arrived. What happened next would be studied by military experts across the galaxy for decades. They would slow down the security recordings to 1,000 of normal speed. They would analyze every frame, every movement, every impossible action, and even then most of them would not believe what they were seeing. 3 seconds, that was all it took. In the first second Marcus moved, the word moved was not accurate. 1 moment, he was standing behind Alina. The next moment, he was simply somewhere else. The recordings would show that he crossed 4 meters in less than 200 milliseconds. No human should have been able to move that fast. No human should have been able to accelerate that quickly without tearing their own muscles apart. But Marcus was not a normal human anymore. His hand intercepted Skithel's descending claw exactly 12 cm before it would have struck Alina. His fingers wrapped around the armored limb and stopped it completely. The impact should have broken every bone in his arm. Instead, Skithel's arm stopped as if it had struck a wall of solid steel. The High Commander's eyes went wide with shock. In the second Marcus dealt with the guards, there were 7 Kathvari soldiers in the chamber. They were elite warriors, each one capable of killing a dozen normal humans in close combat. They were armed with plasma weapons and molecular blades. They had been trained since birth to fight and die for the Dominion. They never had a chance. Marcus' free hand moved in a blur. Objects flew through the air, small objects, metal objects. They made no sound as they crossed the chamber. They simply appeared in their targets. 2 guards dropped instantly, neural needles embedded in the soft joints between their armored plates. The needles carried an electrical charge designed to overload Kethari nervous systems. Soldiers collapsed like puppets with cut string. Marcus released Skylow's claw and spun toward the remaining guards. His body moved in ways that should not have been possible. He seemed to flow like water, like smoke, like something not entirely bound by normal physics. 3rd guard raised his plasma rifle. Marcus was inside his reach before he could fire, one hand deflecting the weapon, the other striking the precise point where the guard shell was weakest. The soldier's chest plate cracked. He fell. The 4th and 5th guards attacked together, their molecular blades humming through the air. Marcus ducked under one swing and stepped inside the other. His hands moved faster than the eye could follow. Both guards went down, their primary limbs hanging useless at their sides, the joints shattered with surgical precision. 6th guard tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Marcus appeared in front of him, a single strike to the throat. The guard choked and collapsed. The 7th guard was the smartest. He dropped his weapons and raised his limbs. In surrender, Marcus paused for a fraction of a second, calculated that the guard was no longer a threat, and moved on. In the 3rd second, Marcus returned to Skull. The High Commander had not moved. He could not move. His brain was still trying to process what had just happened. His 7 elite guards, warriors who had served him for decades, were scattered across the floor like broken toys. One human had done this. One soft, clawless human, Marcus stood. In front of Skeel, he reached up and caught the High Commander's claw again. The same one that had been descending toward Alina 3 seconds ago. He held it, effortlessly like an adult holding a child's hand. The grand chamber was absolutely silent. Every delegate, every guard, every observer in the room was frozen in shock. The Velari ambassador had stopped breathing. The Dreenith delegation had backed against the far wall, their predator instincts screaming at them to get away. Even the ancient Salarians were staring at the human with something that looked very much like fear. Marcus looked up at SK Kethel. High Commander was nearly 3 times his height. His body was covered in natural armor. His species had evolved as apex predators on a world of constant warfare, and yet at that moment he was utterly helpless. You raised your hand against my principle, Marcus said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. It carried through the silent chamber like a whisper in a graveyard. I am now authorized to respond with unlimited force. Skyle tried to pull his claw free. He was strong enough to lift a ground vehicle. He could not move Marcus' grip by a single millimeter. Your guards have been neutralized, Marcus continued. They are alive. I was instructed to minimize casualties unless lethal force became necessary, but I want you to understand something, High Commander. He tightened his grip slightly. The armored shell of Skal's claw began to crack. I could have killed all of them. I could have killed them so quickly that they would not have known they were dying until they were already dead. I could have painted this chamber with their blood and moved on to your delegation before anyone had time to scream. Another crack. Skithel made a sound of pain. I could do the same too. You right now in front of everyone, and there is nothing in this room that could stop me. Marcus paused. His gray eyes held Skal's 6 eyes without blinking. You have 6 seconds to withdraw your hand and apologize to Ambassador Vasquez. If you do not, I will begin dismantling your delegation permanently somewhere. In the chamber, someone was sick. The sound of vomiting echoed through the silence. Skethel's mandibles trembled. His pride screamed at him to fight, to resist, to show no weakness, but his survival instincts were older and stronger. They told him that this human, this impossible creature, was not bluffing. They told him that death was standing in front of him, wearing a gray suit and speaking in a gentle voice. Scathel's voice came out as a rasp. I withdraw. He pulled his claw back. Marcus released it without resistance. The High Commander stumbled backward, cradling his cracked limb against his body. I apologize, Scathel said. Words seemed to cause him physical pain. To the human ambassador, I apologize. Marcus nodded once, then he turned and walked back to his position behind Alina. He stood exactly where he had been standing before. His hands were at his sides. His expression was calm and blank, as if nothing had happened. The chamber remained frozen. Hundreds of aliens stared at the human delegation with new eyes, the soft creatures without claws, the weak species that had stumbled into space, the children who should have been grateful for any scraps the greater powers allowed them. That was what they had believed. That was what they had been told. Now they knew the truth. Alina Vasquez turned to address the chamber. Her voice was steady, her expression composed. She might have been discussing the weather. The human delegation wishes to continue with today's scheduled negotiations, she said unless there are any objections. There were no objections. Nobody in the chamber would object to anything human said for the rest of the summit, as the delegates slowly returned to their platforms as the HFY guards were carried out for medical treatment as the normal business of the conclave resumed with shaking hands and trembling voices. One thought echoed through every alien mind: what else were the humans hiding? And if this was just their aide, just their servant, what were the rest of them capable of? The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen prey. They were only now beginning to realize that they had been looking at predators all along. The Keth delegation left Terminus Prime. Within the hour, they did not announce their departure. They did not make any statements. They simply boarded their ships and vanished into the darkness of space. Skyle did not look back. He would spend the rest of his life trying to forget the feeling of those gray eyes staring into his soul. But the other delegations remained. The Grand Chamber was supposed to be empty during the recess period. Instead, it was full. Representatives from 11 species had gathered not to negotiate but to demand answers. They clustered around the human platform like nervous animals around a fire, drawn by curiosity but terrified of what they might learn. Alina stood at the center of their attention. Marcus stood behind her, silent and still, a reminder of what they had witnessed. The Velari. Ambassador Korvax was the first to speak. His voice was quieter than it had been yesterday when he had laughed at the human delegation. There was no laughter in him. Now what is he? Korvax asked, pointing at Marcus. What did we just see? Our analysts have reviewed the recording 17 times. They say what he did should be physically impossible. No species in the known galaxy can move that fast. No species can react with that precision. What is he? Alina considered the question carefully. She had been authorized to reveal certain information if the situation required it. This situation definitely required it. Marcus is a Reaper, she said, one of approximately 50 individuals who serve as humanity's last line of defense against existential threats. What is a Reaper? Asked Salarin. Elder VTH Kai, her ancient voice carrying through the chamber. We have never heard this term. That is because we have never told anyone about them, Alina replied. Reapers are classified at the highest level of human security. Their existence is known to fewer than 100 people in all of human space. Most human governments do not know they exist. She paused, letting that sink in. Reapers are created, not born. They begin as the most capable soldiers in human history. Then they are selected for a program that transforms them into something more. Genetic modification increases their strength, speed, and reflexes beyond normal human limits. Cybernetic enhancements allow their bodies to perform actions that would destroy ordinary flesh and bone. Psychological conditioning ensures their absolute loyalty and removes the mental barriers that prevent normal humans from using their full physical potential. The Dreenith delegate, a scarred warrior named Kathrus, stepped forward. You are saying that this human has been artificially enhanced, that he is a machine? He is not a machine, Alina said. He is human, all of him. We simply unlocked what was already there. What do you mean? Korvax asked. Alina took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when the galaxy would finally understand what humanity truly was. Let me tell you about Earth, she said, our home world. The planet where humans evolved. She activated a holographic display. An image of Earth appeared floating in the air above the delegates. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Earth is what our scientists call a Category 5 death world. Elena said it is one of the most dangerous planets ever discovered that still supports complex life. Murmurs passed through the crowd. Category 5 was the highest rating on the galactic danger scale. Worlds at that level were usually quarantined. On Earth, everything is trying to kill you. Elena continued, the planet experiences extreme temperature variations that can freeze or burn unprotected organisms within hours. The atmosphere carries thousands of microscopic parasites and diseases, many of which can kill within days. The surface is covered with predators that have spent millions of years perfecting the art of hunting and killing. Even the plants are dangerous. Many of them produce poisons that can stop a heart in seconds. The display changed to show images of Earth's wildlife: lions, sharks, venomous snakes, spiders, crocodiles. The aliens watched with growing unease. And yet, Elena said, humans became the dominant species on this world. We did this without claws, without armor, without venom. We did this with soft skin that tears easily and bones that break under pressure. Do you understand what that means? Silence. The delegates were beginning to understand. It means we are the most efficient killers our planet ever produced. Elena said, not because we are strong, because we are smart, because we are adaptable, because we never ever give up. She changed the display again. This time it showed early humans hunting. Our ancestors hunted prey by following it, not for minutes, not for hours, for days. They would track an animal across the landscape, never stopping, never resting until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, while other predators relied on speed or strength. Humans used endurance and intelligence. We invented tools to extend our reach. We invented strategies to outthink our targets. We invented cooperation to overwhelm larger enemies. The display showed human history: stone tools, bronze weapons, iron swords, firearms, tanks, aircraft, and then we turned those skills on each other. Elena said, for thousands of years humans fought wars against other humans. We developed weapons and tactics of such devastating efficiency that we had to create laws to limit our own lethality. We invented ways to kill that were so horrible that we agreed never to use them, even against our worst enemies. She turned off the display and faced the delegates directly. The galaxy looked at humans and saw weak creatures without natural weapons. You were wrong. Our weapons are not claws or armor or venom. Our weapons are our minds, our persistence, our absolute refusal to accept defeat. And when we focus those weapons on destruction instead of creation. She glanced back at Marcus. You saw what happens, and Marcus is just one man. Humanity has 8 billion people. We have colonies on dozens of worlds. We have soldiers and scientists and engineers who have spent their entire lives learning how to fight. The chamber was completely silent. The delegates stared at Elena with expressions ranging from fear to awe to something that might have been respect. The Kethi thought they could threaten us into submission. Elena continued, they thought we would surrender because we are small and soft and new to the galaxy, they were wrong. Humanity has faced extinction before. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that killed millions of our people. We are still here. We will always be here, and we will not be bullied by anyone. She paused. But we do not want war. We have come to the conclave seeking peace, trade, and cooperation. We want to be partners with the other species of the galaxy. We want to share our knowledge and learn from yours. We want to build a future where all intelligent life can prosper. Together, Alina's voice softened. The violence you witnessed today was not a demonstration of what humanity wants to be. It was a demonstration of what humanity can become if we are pushed. Skyle raised his hand against me. Marcus responded with the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat. He could have killed everyone in this room. He chose not to. He chose restraint. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each delegate in turn. That is what humanity offers the galaxy. Not conquest, not domination, but partnership. We will be the best allies you have ever known. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will stand against those who threaten innocent lives, and we will do it with every tool at our disposal. From diplomacy to devastation. Alina smiled. A small, tired smile that made her look very human. The choice is yours. You can fear us or you can work with us, but either way, you should know what we are. We are humans. We come from a death world, and we have only been pretending to be prey. The delegates looked at each other. They looked at Marcus, standing silent and still behind his ambassador. They looked at Alina, this small, soft creature who spoke of extinction and alliance in the same breath, and slowly, one by one, they began to understand. The galaxy had not discovered a new species of children. They had discovered something far more dangerous. They had discovered humans. The final day of the conclave was unlike any in its 200-year history. When the delegates returned to the grand chamber, the atmosphere had completely changed. There was no more laughter at human expense, no more dismissive comments about soft skin and missing claws. Instead, there was careful respect, measured words, and the constant awareness that the small human delegation was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Alina noticed the difference immediately. Delegates who had ignored her now asked for her opinion. Species that had dismissed humanity now proposed partnerships and agreements. The entire balance of power in the chamber had shifted overnight. The Velari ambassador approached the human platform during the first break. Korvax moved slowly, his massive body language showing submission in a way that Alina had never seen from his species. When he spoke, his voice was soft and respectful. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, I owe you an apology. Alina raised an eyebrow. For what, ambassador? For calling your people meat without protection. Korvax lowered his head, a gesture of deep shame in Velari culture. I was wrong. I looked at you and saw only what was on the surface. I did not see what was underneath. My people have a saying. The most dangerous predator is the one that does not look like a predator. I should have remembered that wisdom. Alina nodded slowly. Apology accepted, ambassador, and I hope this can be the beginning of a better relationship between our peoples. It will be. Korvax raised his head. The Velari High Council has authorized me to propose a formal Trade alliance between our species. We have technologies that could benefit your colonies. You have capabilities that we would like to understand better. Perhaps we can help each other. Similar conversations happened throughout the day. The Dreenith, who had watched the violence with Predator's eyes, expressed interest in military exchange programs. They wanted to learn how humans trained their soldiers. They wanted to understand the techniques that had allowed Marcus to defeat 7 elite warriors in 3 seconds. The merchant guilds of the species focused entirely on trade and profit suddenly found human goods very interesting. They proposed favorable trade deals that would have been unthinkable yesterday. Even the normally isolationist Crystalline Collective sent representative to express interest in scientific cooperation. They had never approached a species younger than 10,000 years. Humanity had been spacefaring for only 30 years, but something about the humans intrigued them. By the end of the day, Alina had received more proposals, offers, and expressions of interest than any human diplomat in history. The galaxy that had dismissed humanity was now scrambling to be there. Friend, late in the afternoon, a message arrived from the Kethar Dominion. It was short and formal. The Dominion formally withdrew all claims to human colony worlds. They expressed regret for any misunderstandings that had occurred during the summit. They hoped that the two species could maintain peaceful relations in the future. Alina read the message 3 times before she believed it was real. The Kethi never backed down. They never admitted fault. They never surrendered territory until now. As the summit drew to a close, Alina found herself standing at the same viewing window where she had watched the stars on her first night aboard the station. So much had changed since then. The galaxy no longer saw humanity as children. They saw them as equals, perhaps in some cases as superiors. You are troubled. The voice came from behind her. Alina turned to find Salarin Elder VTHK standing in the doorway. The ancient being moved with slow grace, her body glowing with soft bioluminescence that changed color with her emotions. Right now the glow was a thoughtful blue. May I join you? Bethkai asked. Of course, Elder. The Salarin floated to the window and looked out at the stars. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. We have watched younger species rise and fall for 10,000 years, VTHK finally said. We have seen conquerors who thought strength was everything. We have seen tyrants who ruled through fear. We have seen monsters who destroyed everything they touched. She turned to look at Alina, her ancient eyes holding wisdom accumulated over centuries. Your kind is different. Alina frowned. Differ how? You carry death in your bones, VTHK said. We felt it in that chamber when your protector revealed himself. We all felt it, that cold presence, that absolute certainty of destruction. Your species has perfected the art of killing in ways that we have never seen. In 10,000 years we have never encountered a species with such potential for violence. Alina said nothing. She was not sure if this was a compliment or a warning, and yet Bethkai continued. You came here seeking peace. You could have dominated this summit through fear. After what happened with the Kith, every species in that chamber would have agreed to anything you demanded. You could have claimed territory, resources, power beyond measure. All you had to do was threaten them. We don't want to rule through fear. Alina said. No, you do. Not VTHK's glow shifted to a warm gold. That is what makes you terrifying. Ambassador, not your capacity for violence, your capacity for restraint. Your protector could have killed High Commander Skal, he could have killed everyone in that room. Instead, he showed mercy. He gave a warning when he could have given death. The ancient Salarin moved closer to Alina. Do you understand what that means? It means your species chooses to be kind. You have the power to destroy, and you choose to create. You have the ability to conquer, and you choose to cooperate. Every moment of every day, you make the choice to hold back the monster inside you. Bethkai's voice grew soft. And if you ever stop choosing, if humanity ever decides that kindness is no longer worth the effort, the galaxy will burn. Nothing will stop you. Nothing will survive you. You will be the extinction event that ends everything. Alina felt a chill run down her spine. Is that a warning? It is a truth. Bethkai's glow returned to thoughtful blue. We Curans have seen the rise and fall of 100 civilizations. We have learned to recognize the species that matter, the ones that shape the future, the ones that change everything. She paused. Humanity is one of those species. For better or worse, you will define what the galaxy becomes. The only question is what you will choose to do with that power. The elder turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. Choose wisely. Ambassador, the universe is watching. Then she was gone. Alina stood alone at the window for a long time, thinking about what the elder had said. She did not hear Marcus approach until he was standing beside her. The transport is ready, he said. We should depart within the hour. Alina nodded but did not move. She continued to stare at the stars. Marcus, she said, in that chamber with Skal, you could have killed him. Yes, why didn't you? Marcus was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something that might have been thought or perhaps emotion. Alina could never tell with him. Because you did not want me to, he said. And because fear is a more useful lesson than death. Skithel will return to his people and tell them what happened. He will tell them about the human who stopped his claw with one hand. He will tell them about the guards who fell in 3 seconds. And every time he tells that story, every species who hears it will think twice before threatening humanity. He paused. A dead enemy is just a body. Living enemy who fears you is a message. Today I sent a message to the entire galaxy. I told them what happens when they threaten the people I am sworn to protect. Alina turned to look at him. And what happens to the next species that doesn't listen to the message? Marcus's gray eyes met hers. For just a moment she saw something move in their depths. Something cold and patient and utterly without mercy. They won't have a warning, he said. They'll just have me. The stars stretched into infinity. Outside the window, somewhere out there, 100 species were looking at humanity with new eyes, some with fear, some with respect, some with calculation. They had learned an important lesson today. The soft creatures from the death world were not prey. They had never been prey. They were predators who had chosen to wear the mask of civilization. They were monsters who had chosen to be kind, and that choice, more than any weapon or warrior, was what made humanity truly dangerous. As their ship departed Terminus Prime and vanished into the endless dark, Alina allowed herself a small smile. The summit had been a success. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy. Not as children, not as victims, but as equals, whatever came next. The universe would never underestimate them again. Behind her, Marcus stood watch as he always did. Silent, patient, ready, death, wearing a pleasant smile in civilian clothes, and the galaxy for the first time in 10,000 years had learned to be afraid of something.